Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video we'll be doing a 600 subscriber special. We've managed to somehow hit 600 subscribers on the channel, which is amazing. I know it's something small from someone outsider looking in, but to me 600 is simply mind-blowing to me. But anyway, the main point of the video isn't here because of 600, it's here for the setups. So yeah, as you were seeing by the title, I'm giving away my 5 top setups. So we'll have a wet setup, I'll have my base setup for what I'd use for the bike if they're on balanced performance. I'll have a V4 setup, so a setup for any bike that runs V4 configuration, Honda, Ducati, KTM, Aprilia. And then I'll have an inline 4, so Suzuki and Yamaha. Two slightly little differences in them, I'll show you them. That's 4. And the 5th one will be an all-out time trial setting. That will be kind of to get the most out of the bike, but mightn't be the best performing over a race. So let's jump into it now. Right then, the first setup up here on the video will be one for an inline 4, so a Yamaha or Suzuki. Ideally this setup will be for. We're going to start with suspension. So low preload, oil quantity in the middle, soft front hardness, and then in the middle for compression and extension of this front swing arm, which is obviously the front forks. High preload basically pitches the bike rear highwards, front low, basically will aid in initial turning, and mid corner should just slightly turn better. Again, pretty much the rest of it bang in the middle, the rear is fine like that. Vehicle geometry, so the wheelbase basically is what this is, so you're just making slightly longer to aid in smooth change of directions, and again it's a bit more stable would be the word I'd use for it. Now transmission, I haven't done anything to the gears for any of these setups because each track requires different gears, whereas these are a base setup more than anything, so I can't give a base gearbox, but I will show you slipper clutch is 4. Brakes, once again, exact same thing. I can't give a recommendation because each track is totally different, so it's pointless. And ECU, pretty much the same. My base ECU is what you see on screen now. Anti-wheelie 4, engine brake 4, traction 3. That's what I use on all bikes, including in the rain. So let's move on to a V4 setup. Right, for the V4 setup then, it is quite different to the inline 4. So the inline 4 you want to carry much more corner speed, so making the corners as smooth as possible, as high in corner speed. V4 is the opposite. Hint is in the name, you want to make it a V. You want to be fast in, slow mid corner, and fast out. So kind of making into point, so you come in aggressive, you leave aggressive. Mid corner you kind of stop the bike, turn it and accelerate hard out. So my basic setup behind that is high front preload, high oil quantity, and stiffening. You want a very good solid front end with quite low compression and not really pushed out. You want it right underneath you, so the bike will be a bit jittery but it'll be responsive, because you need the bike to turn quickly before you get it back onto the rear, onto the power to get it out of the corner. So for the rear preload, just leave that standard. Again, shorten the rear slightly to make the bike a bit more responsive. High compression, low extension, and that should be it. So that's pretty much it. Vehicle geometry is banging down the middle except for the steering plate position and the rear swing arm length. Again, all in the aid of making the bike turn mid corner quickly just to get it to rotate so you can on the power. Now this bike won't feel very stable, but if you learn to ride a V4 the way you should ride it, it can work. Slipper clutch is 4 as normal, so most of my setups have 4. Brakes and ECU, you already know the story of that. Next up is my balanced performance. Right, here we are. So this is actually a setup I was given to me by a friend of mine on Discord, and it's actually another YouTuber, a Brazilian YouTuber. He writes for Petronas Yamaha, starts with an S, can't think of his name, but apparently he put this out. I was showing it and asked what I think of it, and it's quite good. It works on all bikes, especially it works on all bikes when you have band performance on, because they're all the same bike now. They're not bite the app, but this works. Basically taking all the front suspension and bottoming out, except having a long extension, so it extends a lot. High preload, very short rear end, and everything maxed out. For whatever reason, this guy didn't make the setup, but it does work, so I said I want to include, because if I'm ever doing online races, this is kind of what I use, because the bikes aren't, they're always online, they're on balanced performance, so they're all pretty much equal, so I use this setup. Again, just push out the steering head and the trail just to knock it out a few mil, and leave the swing arm and the play position in bang in the center. With this I do run again this time I actually run a slipper clutch 5, just again online, just have a bit more like for braking, people racing, this is more of a race setup, you could say. It's just to help on braking. Now it isn't ideal because if you push too hard, it can bite you. But anyway, that's the balance performance one. Up next is the wet setup. So for the penultimate setup, this is the suspension. So bottoming out the preload, a very high oil quantity, just to stiffen up the front end, the small but not have it too stiff with the springs very soft, because in the wet you need a bit more feel, you need more movement on the bike to generate heat, and you can feel the limit a bit better with a setup like this. Now if you were to use this in dry, you would overheat your tires a bit and it might feel a bit spongy and a bit bouncy, so try it out if you want. It might work. I personally wouldn't, but no harm in trying, I suppose. Again, high compression and low extension. Bottom out the preload, you want the bike low as possible because you want to use probably as less edge grip as possible. You want the bike kind of soft and bouncy just in the wet to kind of generate heat mainly and to give you feel. You want a lot of feedback in the wet. Swing arm connector, push it all the way out. Again, very soft rear, high compression and actual high extension as well on this one. Vehicle geometry, I actually go quite low on the trail, tuck the front wheel right in under the headstock, steering head inclination also same, just for a bit of responsiveness. It is quite easy to make a wet setup and make it very vague and kind of unresponsive and slow and boring, and it would work and stuff. But this one gives a bit, it's a bit snappy when it changes direction it wants to. It's still a GB, but I put it that way. And transmission, only thing different is I run my slipper clutch on 3, just because if you lock the rear in a wet race, it is a lot harder and wet in any general reason. It will be a lot harder to regain traction when the track is wet, so you ideally don't want to be locking the rear. So for the final race setup, this is going to be the all-out time attack. It's going to be a very aggressive one, but let's get into it. So here we are. Here we have the one and only, so the push setup you could call this. So it's very aggressive setup. It mightn't be, I reckon a lot of people won't like this, but some people might be able to ride it. It will take time to get used to. It'll be something that I say you'll have to ride a bit. You won't just jump on and go quick. The other setups are better for it. This is one where it's, you could say it's the highest potential, but it's hardest to reach the potential, whereas the other ones have lower potential but they're easy to ride closer to it. But just a quick run through. So again, very aggressive on the preload, so slamming the front of the bike down, have the rear pitch high in the air. That will be nice, have a nice turn in effect. Very stiff front end, so you're really going to abuse the front end on this with a very stiff front spring. No compression, no extension. Preload again, like I said, high, short swing arm, just so the bike is reactive. Very stiff rears, actually want to get as much out of the rear tire as possible. Now this will absolutely shred tires, just for reference. Vehicle geometry, we go bang down the middle, because usually I push it out a few just to give you a bit more stability on the braking. This is not, this is just so you can make up time in other positions. And in the transmission, I go for a 7 on the slipper clutch. Now this will be very hard to ride. Like I said, it is a time trial setup. It will be a one-off lap. It'll be something you hold your breath. It'll work for one lap and you probably crash another 6, but that's what it is. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. That has been my top 5 setups I use most frequently on this game for the GP bikes. Before anyone else, I know there's going to be questions, do I use any in Moto 2, Moto 3? Don't really ride Moto 2 on this game, nor Moto 3, and if I do, I don't use a setup. Moto 3, I probably don't think there's any point. I maybe want to play with gears and stuff, but a suspension setup wouldn't be any necessary for me. Moto 2, I can see because you've no traction, you might want to push the rear weight back just to get a bit more weight on the rear tire and stuff like that, but I don't need to make a dedicated video for that, I don't think, because I don't think there's enough in it to make a video. I really don't see any point in using setups in lower classes. I don't spend any time on them on the game anyway. But just want to thank you all for 600 subscribers on the channel. I massively thank you to everyone who has subscribed over the last year and a half or whatever. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have any questions about any of these setups, please feel free to ask. I have no problem asking questions and explaining something if I didn't explain it properly, didn't understand in the video. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all for watching. I shall see you in a video in the not so distant future. Bye bye, take care.